Hello chums. Tokyo 600. This is a race that makes me want to hurt people. It's not necessarily the most difficult race, but it is sufficiently annoying with its drunk AI, repetitive nature, and to salt the wound, the opponents drive cars that appear to exceed the performance point limit. Because if there's one thing that reeks of excellent game design, it's giving your opponents an unfair advantage. There's some very obvious ways around this, of course. The first is to take a leaf out of Ross Chastain's book and wall ride your way to an easy victory. While I see it as fair game, personally there's plenty who think it to be a little bit too exploitative. The other method is the usage of certain engine-swapped cars that cheat the performance point rating system, whether it be the LS7 swapped Volvo 240, S13 Silvia or Toyota Hiace for raw power, or the rally-swapped 1990s Imprezas for a mixture of speed and fuel economy. However, not all of us have reached level 50, so without engine swaps, what do we shove up the blue NSX's arse instead? Well, I'm here to show you that the answer is the rumble of a classic American V8. Allow me to explain. A small number of you may have seen a video I uploaded a few months ago explaining why a 1200 horsepower engine-swapped Volvo 240 has the same performance point rating as a 600 to 700 horsepower Dodge Viper. Basically, it boils down to top speed. Gran Turismo 7 takes into account the top speed of your car, but if you have a customizable transmission, it doesn't take into account your alterations. So the rating system will assume the top speed of the car is whatever its default gear ratios will allow. This is even more effective for certain engine swaps. Take for example the 1999 Impreza. At full tilt, the engine revs to nearly 10,000 RPM. Swap in the rally engine and the red line drops to just 7,000, which means the gear ratios drop just as violently. On default gear ratios, the top speed is actually reduced by 50 miles per hour, which also shrinks the car's PP as a result. Well, as some of you may know, classic American performance cars were mostly designed for the quarter mile, and not a great deal else. So you'll often find that the lowly 4-speed transmissions fitted to old Corvettes, Mustangs and Challengers have close ratios, and result in a top speed that's not much more than 100 miles per hour. This is what I'm using for a slightly unfair advantage with this C3 Corvette. How does it work then? Well, the most important part is which upgrades we use, or more pertinently, the upgrades that we don't use. Several of the permanent engine upgrades will increase the rev limit, which in turn will extend the gear ratios, meaning the top speed increases. So we need to avoid the high lift camshafts, the racing crankshaft, the engine balance tuning, and the titanium connecting rods. This means that the rev limit stays low, and as a result the performance point rating stays low as well. So the list of upgrades I've fitted for this particular build is as follows. Weight reduction stage 1, sports medium tyres, bore up, weight reduction stage 2, power restrictor and ballast, customizable ECU, semi-racing silencer, customizable LSD, increased body rigidity, polished ports, high-end supercharger, intercooler, racing air filter and exhaust manifold, racing brakes and pads, customizable suspension and racing transmission, and if you have it available, the expensive supercharger in the Ultimate tab. The blue paint only counts for about 6 horsepower though, over the standard high-revving supercharger. You may be wondering why I didn't go for the race exhaust. You can, for another 10 horsepower, but I prefer the sound of the semi-racing item. I've also fitted a wide body and aftermarket wheels for wider tyres, along with a front splitter and a hideous rear wing for some much needed stability. For the setup, rear downforce is maxed to get maximum stability and slightly reduce the performance point rating. Front downforce could be set higher than the 75 that I've gone with if you're confident with the car. A pile of ballast weight has been added to the rear to reduce the performance point rating and get the car to a 50-50 weight distribution, which will prevent wheel spin. The rest of the settings, meanwhile, are fairly generic. So let's take this to the god-awful Tokyo 600 race. What's the strategy? Full throttle, fuel map 1, stop once at the end of lap 6. Sorted. While muscle cars aren't the most aerodynamic beasts, raw power alone will still drag this car to 200 miles per hour, but it's the acceleration on the way there where the C3 truly excels. The brakes aren't the best, but they're nowhere near as bad as something like the S13 Silvia. For obvious reasons, the old Vette is prone to wheel spin, especially in the earlier stages of the race when there's more surface water on the track. You need to be particularly careful with braking distances before the final corner because you'll lose your clean race bonus if you overshoot. While it's more or less capable of passing the blue NSX at the start of lap 2, you can take your time and simply allow the straight line speed to carry you past the opponents if you're worried about the clean race bonus. Depending on your driving style, you may run out of fuel just before reaching the pits at the end of lap 6, so you may want to coast through a few of the corners to make it last longer. Most of my lap times were around the 2-minute 4-second mark, but I did manage one 2-minute 3-second lap. Once the track dries up, the C3 is actually a very enjoyable car to drive, and it's certainly helped by using sports medium tyres instead of the usual sports hard that most builds use. In the end, I ran out of fuel a short distance before the finish line, winning the race in a little under 26 minutes, which is not bad at all for an old American V8. So that was a 50-year-old classic embarrassing some modern sports cars. Thank you very much for watching. Are there any other cars you want to see receive this kind of treatment? Let me know in the comments. Take care now, and ta-ra.